On one level, there's a verse that says, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So there's a kind of, you have to assess, well, where's your treasures? What do you love? What do you care for? What is it that you put all of your attention towards? If you kind of go through your whole day and you attend to yourself and you say, well, what did I pay attention to throughout the whole day? Was it to prayer? Was it to what I was going to eat for lunch? Was it to what I was going to eat for dinner? I mean, food is often on my mind. Was it who I'm going to be meeting up later in the day? Was it this person who texted me that I've been thinking about? Was it this person who called me? You know, all these things it's a kind of requiring a kind of a surveillance of what's your attention. But the thing is that, you know, you can deceive yourself, with these things. So there's ways in which you have to attend to where your treasure is. But also the problem is you can't totally know sometimes what your treasure is. So sometimes what you need is another individual to tell you what your treasure is. So whether that means a spiritual guide or a friend who also is not a little bit confused about what their treasures are, you know, who's someone who's not totally kind of doesn't have it totally about their treasures, maybe a friend that has some kind of idea about what their treasures are and are a bit honest with themselves and can speak honestly with you. You know, these are, I don't know if I could speak to markers, but I could speak to ways in which you can clarify, in which you can elucidate, in which you can make more clear what is going on in your heart to address it.
John, you were born in the US, right?
That's right.
Okay, so you're a true Copt living in the US. You mentioned a spiritual guide, or this can be a servant or a priest or a father of confession. Mm-hmm. So many people believe that the mystery of confession just belongs to Egypt, belongs to the church in Egypt, to the Eastern culture, not the Western culture. What do you think of this? Do you still believe that Coptic youth living in the West, especially in the US, need a guide, a spiritual guide?
Oh, of course. I mean, if you believe that you can navigate this life alone, you're deluded. I mean, it's just, the reality is you will find guides in this life. Whether those guides are social media figures, whether those guides are celebrities, whether those guys are friends that you choose to attach to, whether those guys are servants, there is no doubt that everyone is guided by someone. We are totally dependent on other people to guide us from the day we're born. And so this idea that we think that we guide ourselves, yeah, like I said, the heart is completely is deceitful above all things. You know, to believe that you think that you can guide yourself is unchristian. This is not a Christian idea. You know, that this idea, like, what's the beauty of Christ is even Christ, who is supposed to be who's God and can be totally independent of us, acts in a way that is as though he's dependent on us. Yani, for example, is there not a doubt in everyone's mind that Christ can carry the cross as God, that Christ can carry the cross all the way to the summit of the mount? I mean, it's obvious to us. He's God. He can do all. I mean, there's also obviously the question. Well, he's a suffering God that had been tortured up to that point. But Do you think that he couldn't carry the cross all the way to the top? This is within his possibility, and yet he depended on Simon, or he showed a certain dependency on Simon to carry the cross with him. And if we're talking about God, who's the most independent of beings in this world, let us not act as though we are like God, and in the, that we are like a kind of unique God that is completely independent without any kind of dependency need for other to help us navigate this world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as Abuna introduced, I'm a psychiatrist, and so and a therapist, and so you see how much people genuinely and deeply do not know themselves, and they need someone else, and they need engagement, they need interaction with someone else, and someone who's willing to speak a certain truth to them in order for them to appreciate something about themselves. Otherwise, they can go through their whole life blind.
This is even true in psychiatry?
Yeah, I mean, this is every patient, everyone is like this. They're coming for guidance. I mean, see, this is the problem is, for American culture, they don't have the priest, they have the psychiatrist, they have the therapist. They have the therapist as a priest who does the guidance for them. But the problem is that the psychiatrists also, they don't know, like I said, they don't know where they're confused about where their treasure should be. So they guide them to the places they think they know to go to. Right?
I was so lucky in Egypt. I had my second father of confession, who I had for like more than 27 years,
Mm-hmm.
was a priest and a psychiatrist. So I had two in one.
Okay, very good. Extra special, very good. But God teaches us something about, in some ways, about almost kind of depending upon us. He teaches us that even if God being the most independent, depending on us, what does that say about us? That we need one another in order to navigate this world. And most of all, we need those who seem to have an idea about how to navigate. I mean, I would obviously say here that the priest knows how to navigate. I mean, I work with a bunch of therapists, and I could tell you that a bunch of them, they don't know where they're leading their patients. They're bringing them to different places. There's not an end in sight. They kind of lead them in. They can lead them astray. And the beauty of the church is that it has servants, it has priests that can provide a certain guidance for individuals, and a guidance that is oriented to the right goal. Okay. Any questions thus far? Okay, very good. Hi, Gina.
Hi. I have a little question about the heart and the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there's not so much of a demarcation of when you're thinking with your brain or when it's your heart that's speaking. So how do we know which to listen to? So to speak, like our heart is emotional and can lead us down the wrong path because our emotions can get the best of us, where our mind can maybe lead us on a more sensible note, but can also lead us astray because we think of ourselves, maybe we don't think about the way we think for ourselves instead of asking God to give us his thoughts. We think with our thoughts. So it's kind of hard to see like which one is working better.
That's fair. That's a fair question.
Is there any guidance as to like how to think about our thought processes? And
I don't know if I'll be able to provide guidance, but I'll give you my thoughts about it. So am I connected well? Can everyone hear me well? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's a Russian saint that talks about putting your mind, Theophan the Recluse, that talks about putting your mind in your heart. And what he's trying to say there is that I think sometimes we believe that these two things should be separated. But the reality is that the best decisions are made when the two are united. And so much of our work in prayer is to have God unite these two different parts of ourselves together. You know, I wanted to speak to this a bit because, you know, we talk a lot in our church about how the Trinity is three persons, but one God, and one God, but three persons. And we talk a lot about how Christ is both human and divine. We say two in one in two, and we keep going back and forth. And there's a utility to, there's a parallel for us in this emphasis on this idea of unity. That there's a kind of, what God does for us is he takes us, and I'm going to speak to this a bit more, but he takes us, he takes our fragmented selves and tries to put us and unite us wholly together in the same way that he brought the human and divine together, or in the same way that the three are one and the one are three. That this idea of unity is almost like I almost would say that it's a spiritual word. You know, it's a word that has really particular spiritual valence. It's a word of, it's not just a regular word, you know, and so what I would say for someone who feels split is that I would go to God and say, these are two, I'm moving in two directions, and yet you are the aim, and there's only one direction towards you. So put my mind in my heart so that I can find the kind of middle road, perhaps, if the middle road is what is where your heart and mind connects. You know, it often is like, to give another example, sometimes the mind and heart are split among genders in a couple. You know, like the husband is the mind, the woman is the heart. You know, and I was with a couple the other day, and the husband wants, they have a child, and the husband sees the child trying to walk and kind of fall, and the kid was falling. You know, it was just kind of getting up and then tumbling down. And the husband wants to say, no, leave it. You know, let him. He's using his mind. If he doesn't learn how to do this, he'll never learn. Like, a kind of like very just thinking about it. And the mother, of course, is thinking, no, let's go pick him up and let's like maybe hold him and maybe just help him. And you know, there's merits to both. There's merits to both, right? And that really the raising of the child requires both in order for the child to not feel like they're abandoned, and also not feel like the parents are over involved, so that they don't develop any kind of independence. And so whenever so what I would say, so you know, that's a kind of more practical example, but these are examples of to say that the mind and the heart are meant to be connected, and that if they are disconnected, then this is maybe something to be addressed in prayer, and something to be addressed with, you know, something to ask God about to unite for you. I hope I offered something with that.
This is great. We appreciate it, John. Do we have any more questions? We are so happy to have more questions.
Okay. I mean, I didn't realize. I mean, I do have another part of this lesson, but we can go with questions if that's better. I mean, whatever people prefer.
No more questions.
How much time do we have, Bruno?
Not that much, but we're happy to stay with you.
Okay.
Young wise man.
Sure. Okay. Well, I just want to address this idea about what God's going to do with your heart. Why does he want it? What is he taking it for? What's he going to do with it? And unfortunately, and fortunately, the answer is that he's going to break it.
Good
that
news.
He's taking your heart to break it. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, that's a little bit too hard to ingest. that God is taking your heart of stone, breaking it, and making it into a heart of flesh. I mean, this is what in Isaiah is talked about with the potter. He breaks the vessel and then refashions it. And this story of breaking us and then refashioning us, this trope, this kind of theme, this is all over the history of the church, and it's all over the history of the Bible and the stories of the Bible, and it is a central theme. This idea of breaking is a central part of Christ's life. So to give a story, there's an architect who was working in the royal palace in Britain, and his intention was to cover the inside of the palace, with sheets of beautiful mirrors from France. The shipment of the glass came from France, with every mirror smashed along the travel. And the entire shipment was destroyed. And so the people that saw this, the kind of I guess the garbage men or whoever was helping the architect work, basically were about to throw all of these mirrors, the whole set of things into the garbage. And then the architect said, no, wait a minute, I have an idea. So then he took a hammer and broke some of the bigger broken pieces into smaller pieces. And he gathered them up in his hands and walked over to the area where he wanted to place this in the palace. And he put some glue on the wall and arranged the tiny pieces throughout the wall. And he did this several times until he had what essentially was all these different kinds of reflections that ended up sparkling with a kind of rainbow of brilliant colors. And essentially, that palace became known for basically the glass being kind of converted into these prisms where the white light was transferred into to go back to physics for those who enjoyed physics, to break up that white light into the full spectrum of light. And so there's a parallel with God, right? So God takes the broken pieces of our lives, as the architect took the broken pieces of those mirrors, and he makes it over into something better for his divine purpose. And that's what God does with your broken heart. Yes, he breaks it, but he breaks it to refashion it into something better. So, there's the examples in the Bible. God took broken people throughout the Bible. The Apostle Peter, someone who was broken by sin, wept bitterly for his betrayal. Then God made him, this broken man, into the leader of the apostles. Another broken man, Saul, persecutor of Christians. He was broken. He was made blind on the road to Damascus, before becoming the Apostle Paul a vessel of God's choosing. And you have Thomas, also broken by his doubt, who went on to become this apostle who went on to become this apostle who preached the word. The tradition tells us in India and Ethiopia. We have the Samaritan woman, broken by 5 marriages. She came from 5 broken marriages, who became Fotini, the apostle to the Samaritans. And then we have another example from the Old Testament, King David, broken by his sins of murder and adultery. And he repented and was forgiven. And then he says in Psalm 50, the sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken heart, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Well, what he wants as a sacrifice is a broken heart. And so, one father says, God's perfect work has always been accomplished through broken and imperfect people. And again, we're thinking about the potter in Isaiah 64. A potter who molds and shapes clay to make beautiful and useful vessels. But the potter also can smash and break the clay in order to start over and make something better. So we can understand maybe what the verse in the Psalm say, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. We have a sense of what that means. And just to relate this to St. Mary, St. Mary also suffered a broken heart. Simeon, when he's in the temple and he sees St. Mary with the child Jesus, among the things that he says, he blesses them and says to Mary, his mother, behold, this child is appointed for the falling and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed. And a sword will pierce through your own soul also. Or we could say pierce through her heart, so that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. So we have an understanding here that Saint Mary, and I want to speak to this a bit elaborately, because what happens is some people think that Saint Mary's job or kind of gig as the mother of God was a great gig. She got to be the mother. She didn't have to do anything. She just, sometimes suggests him to do a miracle one time or another. But the question is, could you be a mother that could bear a sword going through your own heart? Could you bear the mother that had her heart broken by seeing her son die on the cross? This is not something simple. And part of the reason why St. Mary was chosen was because her heart could be broken and refashioned. Yeah, that it's not it wasn't as easy to be St. Mary as we think. It is not an easy thing for a mother to see her child accused, spit upon, slapped, carrying the burden of the cross after being whipped and being crucified, and to stand before all of it. These are not easy things. And part of the reason why she was chosen is in some way because she really gave her heart over to God to be broken. She really gave her heart to God to be broken. Any questions? Okay. So I just want to review that the main themes that we hear the use of the Bible, the use of the heart in the Bible, is that the heart is unknowable, that it's the seat of just not only emotions but other things like your will, your desires, your needs. That because your heart is unknowable, we need we can try to attend to it by paying attention to what our treasure is, or help other people tell us what our treasures are so that we can have a better understanding of our heart. And finally, when it says, my son, give me your heart, he's asking it, unfortunately and fortunately, to break it. Because God is really only near to those who are brokenhearted. And we have the example of St. Mary, whose heart was broken, but who in the end was able to bear witness to the glory of the resurrection right after her heart was broken. And that's the reality for us, is that our hearts can be broken, but we can be refashioned into a human being in the likeness and image of our Lord Jesus Christ. And glory be to God forever. Amen.